especially on a global space. And that is what we're going to use this moment to see if we can achieve. That is what we are going to use this moment to see if we can achieve. Very, very important. We understand it. There is various global developments, and it's important we understand the importance of not just being knowledgeable, being informed about things evolving, how things are developing. But I think beyond that is we own ourselves responsibility to make a critical evaluation of everything happening around us. We must understand that we are part of this world, irrespective of the continent at which we find ourselves. We are part of the global community. We are stakeholders in this world. And we must, as a matter of necessity, demand for inclusion, demand for participation. You see, when you play an isolative card, invariably you isolate yourself. So I am Mazi Chika Austin, as I rightly said earlier, and it's very, very important you notify us if we are coming out loud and clear. If you're receiving us from your end on a clear note, you have to make use of the comment section to inform us that we are coming out loud and clear. Then we got no business other than to advance to this evening's discussion. Very, very important. And I also believe on the screen of your gadget, you can see a link. That is our YouTube channel. Of course, we are waiting for a reasonable number of subscribers on YouTube. Then we also have a YouTube channel properly activated so that we can have a multi-dimensional channels of reaching out to people, very, very important. So let us understand if you're receiving us loud and clear. Let us understand if we are coming out on a better note. If we are, then we have to, okay, I think I can get some responses to that effect. So we have to move. So this evening we are specifically going to talk about global development. And of course, when I talk about global development, it's not only leverage. Also help us to share this program. It's not leverage to political developments. It's not leverage to economic developments. Neither is it leverage to social development. All we are going to talk about this evening, as much as we can, is all encompassing. We are going to look at the world from a broader perspective, and then make a holistic assessment about the global development. The essence of that, I want us to appreciate something here. I want us to understand something here. Africa has been the way she is, not because of any spiritual, like some of us would want to think. It's not because of any divine exclusion, not because God said or a beings excluded Africans. No, Africa has been the way it is because Africans refuse to integrate. And when you fail to integrate, when you fail to follow suit, various global development, you are doing yourself a lot of disservice. And I want to tell you, one of the concerns of the West today is because there tend to be a very strong awakening. There tend to be a very strong consciousness, messages that are geared towards, rejuvenating the minds of people they felt were those. I think this age, there is a serious reawakening. But make no mistake about that, because whenever there is a progression, whenever there is a flow, I want you to take note to what I want to say. Whenever there is a flow, two things happen. Either to reconfigure that movement, I'm talking about redirecting the direction of the movement, or putting a total stop of that movement, which one can say missing it. Either the movement is fixed advantageously to the oppressor, or the movement is mixed. Do you understand me? So this is exactly what is happening, ongoing in this part of the world. Specifically talking about Africa. There is a growing consciousness. There is a growing reawakening, but it's not enough for you to acknowledge that fact. Beyond acknowledgement of this reawakening, this consciousness, you must understand that the primordial, at the level of this consciousness, at the level of this reawakening, one thing you should understand, or one thing you must understand, is that the primordial powers are not just going to watch the consciousness, they are not going to watch the reawakening to flourish without them having control on that. And that is where the concept of disinformation, the concept of misinformation, these two parallel lines, this is where they play in. So if you think that there is awakening, there is a mental renaissance ongoing in Africa, and you think that the primordial powers are going to just stay aloof and watch it being solely directed by the Africans, believe you me, you are getting the line of argument. They are not going to watch, because they are going to thrive on the areas you are less informed. Make no mistake about this. They are going to capitalize, they are going to maximize, they are going to utilize those areas they felt you are half informed on. These are areas they are going to use to make a total disruption of the entire embryo of the so-called awakening. And that is why we are taking it as a responsibility, we are taking it as a duty to, exchange, to pass information as much as we can, as much that are on our disposals, so that people will understand what life is all about, what reality of the time is all about. So we are talking about the changing global issues. And I want to also add up by saying, before I dive into the nitty-gritty of this evening's program, I want to also add additionally, it's important for us to note that every continent, I always say this, repeatedly I always say this, every continent had what we call a grand of their renaissance. Every continent I mean. Every continent had a spot at which their development started. Historically speaking, factually speaking. Let's look at the 6 continents. We know we have 7 continents, but let's look at the 6 human inhabited continents. Talking about Africa, Asia, Europe, North America, South America, and what have you. If you look at every single one of these continents, one thing is pertinent, one thing is unique. They have where their development started. And if you disrupt that center of takeoff, if you disrupt and obstruct that center of their takeoff, their Renaissance takeoff, their Industrial Revolution takeoff, if that center is disrupted, everything about that continent is in a very big mess. And this is what thing I want us to understand. And this is what we might call the microcosm of every development you have seen in this world. If you come to, let's just look at the 6 continents, humanly inhabited continents of the earth. For instance, if you look at Asia, what you're seeing in Asia today did not just uniformly started in Asia. Make no mistake about that. The Asians, what you're seeing in Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, South Korea, China, and all the rest of them, did not started uniformly. The Asian civilization, or let me not say civilization, because it's a very broad concept here. The Asian Industrial Revolution, the industrialization spirit in Asia started in Japan. The light Asians are seeing today originated from Japan. So if Japan was destroyed, if Japan was obstructed, trust me, even though that industrialization would have started somewhere else, it could have also taken a whole lot of time for the Asians to catch up with development. If you come to North America, for instance, you find out that what you're seeing in Canada, to an extent in Mexico, all started in United States. And if you look at the United States also from a broader perspective, you will understand also that the industrialization that started in the United States started from northern part of United States, northern states. And because something, a light was ignited, it gradually spilled over to the entire United States, moved to Canada, and by extension, other parts. The same way happened in South American states. If you look at South American states, you find that because Brazil has taken the process of takeoff, because Brazil has taken the process of industrial revolution, every single member state found in Southern American continent began to also experience light. If you come to Europe, what you're seeing in Germany, what you're seeing in France, what you're seeing in other parts of Europe started in Great Britain. The Industrial Revolution that started in Britain also engulfed the entirety of that continent. Now ask yourself a question. Why is it that Africa has never experienced this? Is a question that calls for an answer. And of course, if you look at Oceania, I'm talking about where you find out Australia, New Zealand, and all the rest of them. If you look at what is happening in New Zealand, look at what is happening in Australia, it's also because it's owing to the fact that there was a light that started in Australia and gradually it began to spill over to other places. But why is it that Africa has never experienced industrial revolution? Why is it that Africa has never experienced what others are experiencing? This is what people do not understand. It has nothing to do with, spiritual context. I know Africans are very religious by nature. But beyond spiritual interpretation of the whole scenario is a conscious plan. Oh, sorry. Let me get, this is a public light. Let me get something on and see. Okay, so a quick one. It's the part of the world we find ourselves, sadly. So we see what we can do. So why is it that Africa has never experienced any kind of industrial revolution? It's just simple. It's obvious. It's just simple to analyze. Africa has never experienced industrial revolution. It's owing to the fact on the ground that certain forces have taken it as a responsibility to make sure that the right center, the right point, like I made analysis earlier, certain forces have made it, taking it as a responsibility that the right center at which Africa is supposed to do their takeoff is obstructed at all cost. It's as simple as that. Like I told us earlier, I said, that Africa is where it is today because a certain forces suppress the center of African development. You see, these forces in questions have taken a whole lot of time to understudy Africa against how Africans know themselves. They have taken a whole lot of time to make a very deep studies on Africans and what they are capable of doing. The world basically is divided between the south and northern hemisphere, and is assumed, for those of you who are exposed to international politics and what have you, the world is basically or traditionally divided into northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere. The northern hemisphere are countries like, they call themselves developed countries or Western nations. While the southern hemisphere, take note of what we're saying, the southern hemisphere are the developing countries. I repeat, the world is, in terms of developmental discussion, the world is divided into two lines, the northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere. The northern hemisphere are supposedly those that call themselves developed countries or economies. And within the southern hemisphere are the developing countries. Now, look at the whole thing. So why at the southern hemisphere you mainly find out countries that supply raw materials to the developed countries, the industrialized countries. And this is where you find Africa and all the rest of them. It is assumed that they have the raw materials to supply for the industrialized north. Now, something happened, or there is a hidden agenda. And what is that hidden agenda? Those in the northern hemisphere, I'm talking about the industrialized nations, mainly the Western nations, as they call themselves. They believe that what they have is the industry, and Africans have the raw materials. So, if they allow Africans to have in the industries, that means Africa will control both the raw materials and the industries. So they felt that the best thing to do is to discourage anything that will lead Africa into industrialization. Because if Africa is to be industrialized, that means they have to control both the industries and the raw materials. And those in Northern Hemisphere will be in a very big mix. So in order to make sure that the Africans don't control both the raw material and the ability to convert the raw materials into finished products, they began to make sure that African leadership structure is handed over to the wrong individuals. Like most of you do not know, that the Biafran War was specifically a war by those in the Northern Hemisphere trying to stop a certain people or a group of people in Africa who wants to showcase the process of industrialization. So it became a threat. It became a strong disturbance to them. That there are certain people in Africa who want to ignite a light, who want to ignite the process of industrialization in Africa. Do you know what happened? There was a consensus. They came together, did everything they could do, galvanized even local Africans against these people that would have began the process of African industrialization, industrial revolution. And that project, they did everything. It was a global conspiracy and it was suppressed. Although the suppression never lasted too long, because with what we are seeing today, it shows that that certain suppression was like, it was a case of you fought a man who pretended he has died and you left only for him to wake up to start up where he stopped. That is exactly the scenario. So they felt that allowing Biafra or Biafrans to decide their fate is like tolerating Japan in Asia, which assisted a lot of Asian nations to see industrialization. Because it's a spillover thing. So they felt that with the curiosity and the passionate spirit of the Biafran people, their quest to strive to any realm, that if they allow such nation in Africa, that definitely these people are going to, impart the light in them to the rest of Africa. And that is all, surrounding the politics of Biafra, which most people are not even well acquainted or informed about. But in the contemporary time, we are seeing a very serious change. We are seeing a very serious power transfer. And this is why we are here. And this is the reason why we do things we are doing. Because, I want us to understand something. I want us to take something on the back of our mind. And what is that thing? Nothing lasts forever. Nothing, absolutely nothing lasts forever. And as far as time, as far as the place of time is concerned, just the way man ages, so is power quotient ages. Just the way human skin, goes down, weakens. That is how powers also weakens as time progresses. So what am I trying to say? We are at the age, one thing I I don't want us to be carried away with is a lot of things are happening. There is a serious transition, global transition ongoing. And while these things are happening, some people are taking advantage of it. Some people are just enjoying the entertainment. While some people are the propeller. There are people who are making things happen. There are people who are maximizing the opportunity of what is happening. And there are people who are just observers, entertaining themselves over what is happening. And those who sit on the entertainment seat are the most foolish people, because they are just there shouting, being happy, without looking for a way to maximize the development. And that is what and where I want us to examine ourselves to see, are we part of those making things happen? Are we part of those maximizing the development, or are we part of those just getting, the ecstasy, the enthusiasm that is coming up from the development? And after this analysis, you might now step back to ask yourself the cogent question, and also give yourself the answer. So we are in an international system that everything is collapsing. Everything Western permutation is fading away. You can take that to the bank. America is in a strong distress. The Europeans are also in great distress. Of course, I'm talking about members of EU are in a great distress. Their military bloc, NATO, is in a high mess. Great Britain is in fact, her own scenario is the worst you can ever imagine. And everything, all these things are happening before our own eyes. We are the generation that is witnessing a new trend, a new international system. But I don't want us to understand it from historical perspective or from academic discourse. I don't want us. I want us to not only understudy the development, but being able to maximize the opportunity. Because it is the end of one hegemony is an opportunity for the rise of the demise of certain empire is the introduction of another empire, because nature abhors vacuum. So we are we are at a time that Western greed, Western hegemony, Western control, Western attraction are in serious questions. That is just the way it is. Literally, that is just the way it is. We are at a time that a lot of things are falling apart. And understand something. Historically speaking, both the collapse and the emergence of new international systems have always been centered on Africa. Historically speaking, the formation of new system on global stage have always been centered on Africa. Africa has been a centerpiece of global developments. Sadly to say that Africans are naive of this reality. So we are in a global system where the West have, out of their miscalculations, out of their hasty choice, have exposed their weakness. They have seriously exposed their weakness. Because what is happening in Eastern Europe today is a sign that the overrated Western power is now being put to question, including the Westerners are also asking questions, asking what has gone wrong with our power quotient, what has gone wrong with whom we are, what has gone wrong with our influence and affluence. These are questions many of Western elites are asking, because what is happening today is beyond their own calculation, is beyond their own templates, is beyond their own, what they envisaged. They never thought. If anyone had told countries of Europe that they will get to a point that they will be begging in countries like Algeria to sell energy for them, that they will be begging countries like Qatar for energy to light their home, to heat their homes. If anyone had told Western nations that such a day will come, they will never believe it. If anyone would tell the Western nations that a day will come, they will beg Russia to sell fertilizer for them, for their farmers, to sell grains for them, so that their people can feed, so that the bakers can bake bread. They will never believe that. If anyone had told the countries of Europe that a time will come that their defense line, I'm talking about the armaments, the volume of their armaments will be so liquidated that they will be in trouble of how to restore their armed warehouses, they will never believe it. And these are realities of today. These are indisputable facts of today. That is just the way nature works. That is just the way time and season reprogram the activities of men. So if you understand the speed of light at which things have changed within a short time, then you will understand that it's only God that controls the affairs of men. Then it will be dawn on you to understand that man can strategize excellently well, man can forecast excellently well, but time and season define or quantifies his analysis. And this is exactly what is happening. So for information, the world is changing speedily, and make no mistake, sometimes most of us want everything to be made bare. I want you to understand something. Even though the Western nations are fading away, even though the Western nations are in trouble, I want you to understand something which you must understand. The West have built a whole lot of false glories, and these glories are depleting before their own eyes, shockingly depleting before their own eyes. A lot of companies are shutting down in Germany and other Western European nations. And America is also being conservative in order not to, out of gesture, waste all she has in storage as regards to energy storage. She has been so mindful of that fact. But make no mistake to think that the West would want to collapse without pulling down the entire world alongside with them. That has been their nature. Most of you don't understand. When they tell you the First World War, Second World War, these wars were not African wars. Neither were they Asian wars. These are just wars that happened within the West and by extension Japan, which is in Asia. But the First World War was mainly European war. It wasn't African war, it wasn't Asian war. It was mainly between the European states. But they called it First World War. The Second World War came, it was mainly between them. The only external force there was the war, the country across Pacific, which is United States and Japan in Asia. Yet they called it Second World War. Because they believe that if they are collapsing, the world should collapse with them. And that is everything they are struggling to see if they can hoodwink the generality of human population into the mess they are falling in. But I want to tell you something, and this is where we just have to be highly critical, devoid of sentiment. Because one thing I've realized in the lives of most of us is that we are deeply sentimental, we are deeply emotional, and realities are not regulated by emotions. Of course, how you feel, how you think, or how you wish is different from how things play out. That is just the way it is. Because we must understand what reality is all about. We must understand, we must embrace the rigidity of reality. How do I mean? Reality is not bendable by your emotion. Reality is not bendable by your feelings. Your feelings, your emotions, your wishes are mere expressions. They are zero influential to reality. And what is the reality? The reality is that we are getting to a point that we must be more strategic in everything we do. More strategic. When I mean more strategic, I mean it will be less talk, and more positioning. Yes, less talking and more positioning. Because what you see happening in Ukraine today is just how will I it's just a litmus test. It's just like a pre-match center. What you're seeing happening in Ukraine today is just like a training for the main match. For those of you who are familiar with football, before players go to the bigger show, the bigger tournament, there are matches they do have. People don't watch it much. Most times, it doesn't pick attention. But in those pre-match events, these are where most the real arrangement, the real plannings are made. What am I trying to say? What you're seeing in Ukraine is just a litmus test. Where the main battle is coming is in Africa. What you're seeing in Ukraine is just a preparation in lieu of what is coming. And where the main war is coming is in Africa. Ukraine is just a training ground of re-strategizing. Ukraine is just a training ground for repositioning. Ukraine is a training ground for re-evaluation of the modern war, which is coming in Africa. For information, understand it that the real war is coming to Africa. Because what Ukraine has paved way for is that Russia can move her offensive if she decides to some continent by building allies in those continents. And for information, what Russia has done in Africa in two countries mainly, Burkina Faso and Mali, have been a strong signal to the Western nation. And they are covertly doing everything possible ahead of what is to come. Because they have moved defensive in Ukraine. They started from offensive, Ukrainian war was not a war between Russia and Ukraine, for your information. It was a war between NATO and Ukraine. And NATO would have successfully win the war if not their miscalculations. And which I'm going to point out for you. Russia would have been sink because the plan was to sink Russia in Ukraine. And that plan would have succeeded, outrightly, if not the miscalculation of the West. And what is that miscalculation? The West was busy fighting Russia in Ukraine. In fact, that is the right statement. They were fighting Russia in Ukraine. Ukraine is just a prosy ground for the war. Zelensky is just a prosy fellow for the NATO power brokers. Despite that Ukraine is not a member of NATO. But they needed a neutral ground to drag Russia into a mess. And they would have succeeded. They would have perfectly succeeded. Really succeeded. Yes, they would have. But because of their miscalculations, they shot themselves on the foot. And what is that miscalculation, for your information? And what is that their miscalculation? The West was in the war, was fighting with Russia in Ukraine. And whenever they are fighting, it was mainly a NATO war. And you know what happens in NATO? Take note, Ukraine is not a member state of NATO. She's not a member of NATO. But she's the proxy at which NATO wanted to teach Russia a lesson. But as it used to be, whenever NATO is fighting an interest war, there's always a contribution for arms supply, which it was obvious every NATO member state at the earlier stage was contributing to the arming of Ukrainians and also NATO missionaries in Ukraine. There was uninterrupted line of supply. And you see, Russia was finding it so difficult to advance in a lot of places as at then because money was coming in, arms were also coming in. But along the line, devil entered Britain. Along the line, Satan entered Britain. And the failure of the West in Ukraine was as a result of, or is as a result of British move. And what is that British move? While the war was going on, member states of NATO were contributing, arming the Ukrainians, giving them enough arms. And Russian soldiers were very careful in expanding because they understood the loss. And even Ukrainians were having the capability to even launch attacks, including in Crimea. As at this time, the war was well prosecuted. Along the line, Britain decided, British government felt that if they are fighting Russia and Russia is still receiving revenue, any Germany, from France and other parts of Europe, that Russia will still be rich to prosecute the war. Get something here. They felt that if Russia is still getting inventories, getting revenue from Germany, from members of European states through gas supply, that is not a good idea. So Britain felt that the best thing to do is to talk in America, to talk in United States into the idea of blowing or sabotaging those pipelines, exporting, transporting gas to Europe. That was what Britain felt. And they successfully convinced America because, to America felt it's a good idea if those pipelines were to be blow up, then the Europeans will depend on American energy. Then America will be supplying the liquefied gas. So Britain convinced America to work with her, let them sabotage, and which they did. The Nord Stream pipes were sabotaged, and countries of Europe now got a dual problem. NATO members in Europe began to have a dual problem, courtesy of British miscalculation, courtesy of British poor thinking. Because before, the countries of Europe were only spending on armaments. They were only spending in arms to Ukraine. That's only where they were. That was the only expenditures they were running on. When Britain sabotaged, talked America into sabotaging the Nord Stream pipe, they now created a double wahala for NATO members. So the NATO members now have two problems to contend with: arms supply to Ukrainians and gas for check for the survival of our population. You see how Britain created a problem for NATO members. So they now had a problem of either they spend in arms supply to Ukraine or they spend in providing gas for their citizens. And guess what? The most prioritized one is how to get energy for their citizens. Because if they don't get the energy, companies will be shutting down, inflation will be there, unemployment will be high, and the cost of living will be high. People will be dying. So what happened is that at that moment, countries like Germany, France, and the rest of them began to weigh the two and said, well, we cannot be supplying arms to Ukraine while our people are dying of gas, energy crisis. And they forgot the issue of arms supply because of British miscalculation. And when that happened, they even approached America and said to the United States, can you send gas, liquefied gas to us on the price at which Russia was selling to us? US said it's not possible. It's not possible that we will move the gas across the Pacific Ocean to you and sell the same amount that Russia is selling to you. No, Russia, the logistics of transporting the gas from Russia to Germany is through the pipeline. And America doesn't have such transportation system to transport liquefied gas from the United States to Europe. America does not have yet such facility. So America does mainly ship transporting. They load them on the tanks and move. So the logistics, when you cost the production cost, if you make the production cost, there is no how it will be sold at same amount Russia sells sold to them. And that was how the Western nations miscalculated and created avoidable problems for themselves. And that is where we are today. And that is the mess at which we are today. Sorry, at which they are today. And of course, Ukraine is speedily falling in the hand of the Russian forces. Quickly and speedily falling. And for America not to take responsibility of losing the battle, they have started a blame game in their domestic politics. What you can hear in America is that the Republicans want to prove the American funding to Ukraine. So that the story will now be that America was unable to help Ukraine to win the war because there was a political division in the Congress. They have started their politics, funny jokes. And we are hearing committee this one to prove the funding. Ukraine is fizzling out before our own very eyes. But I want you to understand something, that the Western loss of Ukraine war is an energy for Russian aggressive foreign policy, especially in Africa. And that is where I want us to look down. That is where I want us to understand what the future looks like. Because if you look at the Western footprint, if you look at Western footprints in Africa, you find out that it's highly competitive. Highly competitive. How do I mean? There is no ground. There has never been any ground at which, there has never been any ground at which the West have commonly come together and say, okay, let's do our things together, especially in Africa. They have been, competing. They have been competing among themselves in Africa. And we are now seeing another dimension at which they are seriously going to have a very big issue in Africa. And this is what I want you to understand, so that you understand what the future of Africa looks like, so that you understand the possibility of redrawing of whatever you have today as African. The possibility is obvious there tomorrow. Yes, the possibility is obvious there. Because if the West had maintained their strong ground on Ukraine, if the West had successfully defeated Russia in Ukraine, their hope of surviving in Africa would have been there. Now, let's make analysis on Africa and what the future looks like, so that you understand it better than the way we are presenting it. If you look at Africa and you look at the history of the West, you'll find out that there is a high resentment against the Western records in Africa. Yes, the West have a very nasty record in Africa. They have the record of slave trade. It's just there before them. They have the record of colonialism. It's just there before them. They have the record of imperialism. It's just there before them. They have the record of neocolonialism. It's just there before them. And it has been so funny to say that when you examine a Western impact in Africa, if you make a holistic analysis of what the West have done for Africans, especially the sub-Saharan African sub-region, you would agree with me it has been the case of exploitation, nothing but exploitation. Some of you might argue on the contrary, after there is a aid, assistance, and all. If you understand the politics of aid, mainstream mindset you are approaching it. There is no aid that is not weaponized. Quote me anywhere. There is no aid, what you call assistance, foreign aid or foreign assistance, that is not attached with interest. Every aid from the West have a clause or what we call conditionalities. And those conditionalities are to be met before you access this aid. There is no free cup of coffee in any part of it. So, but what we are seeing in Africa today, we are now beginning to see a different handshake. Why the West are extending suppressive handshake, repressive handshake, exploitation handshakes, Russia have begun to show an opposite of that. And if we are going to look at some places we have seen, Western operations, like most of the Francophonian countries. I'm talking about countries of Africa that were colonized and are still under French control. If you look at some of these countries, you find out that they are yet to be independent. Virtually all of them are still using central currency approved by France, CFA. All these French-speaking countries in Africa, except Algeria, especially those of them in West Africa, are using CFA. And this currency is made for them in Paris. They mint it and send it to them. And their foreign reserves are being also banked. French use their foreign reserve, what they save as their sovereign wealth. French use it to do business, to even loan it to them. French government encourage them to make those savings in French and also use those savings, loan them with interest. You can see how crazy it is. Asking you to give me your money to save for you. Then I in return I use the money and give you as a loan and pledge interest. And you know what happens in most cases? French government maintains authoritarians, dictators on all those places, so that anyone that wants to question that system, the French government will threaten that failure with coup d'etat. The French government will threaten and say to you, if you want to change this status quo, if you want to challenge this norm, we are going to remove you. We're going to instigate coup against you. And you see most of them trust a black man. He wants to die on that seat. You see him jittering out. You say, okay, yes, I'm comfortable and my family members are comfortable. Why should I even challenge the status quo? Let me just let it be of that. You understand? So what now happened in Mali is that the French government have been subjugating, have been making Mali. That's what they do. They create artificial crisis for you. They create artificial crisis for you. They tell you, okay, we are going to protect you. We are going to protect your country. Sign a military pact with us. Sign a military defense pact with us. We are going to protect. So these countries pay millions of dollars in the hand of the so-called protectors. So in the case of Mali, what they did in Mali is that they created a non-state actor, a terrorist group. They created for Mali and Burkina Faso an artificial crisis. Created a terrorist group for and in return ask them to sign certain agreement and be paying them for them to help them and fight people they created. So what happened in this case is that the same French will arm the terrorist group, the same French will collect money from Malian government to protect Mali. And most times they don't even collect cash, they collect raw materials. And you know what that means? They extract your raw materials and go and sell it on the higher place it have higher value on international market. So what happened in this case is that some young people in the military in Mali and Burkina Faso, they knew all these things and they were not happy because their people are suffering. The Malians are suffering while the Malian government is paying millions of US dollars to French government. That also created that artificial problem for them. So what these guys did was they asked the compromised leaders in Mali and Burkina Faso, and because they understood the implication, they understood that French was not going to take it lightly to them. They understood the consequences. The young military officers who have said the corrupt, compromised conformists among them, they understood the consequences of their actions. Do you know what they did? They ran to Russia. They ran to Russia, had a deal with Russian government, and asked Russian government to send them their security. It's a kind of machinery in Russia for their protection. And when the Russian security machineries came in, they were working in hand. Take bend so they understand what is happening in Africa. When they came, they were working in hand. The French soldiers were also there. The German soldiers were also there. And they were working in hand. But what now happened that made French to pack her load and leave Mali was this. French now realized that the Russian machineries that were contracted by the Malian government to assist them in fighting the terrorists, that these machineries were spying French military. We are using their cyber advancements to steal a lot of things within the French cyber units. And a lot of sensitive information within the French military were stolen by the Russian contracted machineries. And French and German government understood the implication that they were going to lose a lot if they keep remaining and be operating where these guys are operating, that a lot of their sensitive information were going to be stolen. And they told Mali bye-bye. Not only telling Mali bye-bye, the Malian government ejected French NGOs. Everything that would make French to have access to Malian soil, they got them removed. The same thing happened in Burkina Faso. And for information, most of you never knew that there was a third coup in Satoma and Principe. Because these young men in Mali and Burkina Faso are secretly encouraging other African states to see reason to put out Western presence in their soil and get Russia in. And that is exactly what is happening. So what are we trying to say? We are getting to a point that a lot of things, because the West that are being putted out, you see when Emmanuel Macron went to Tunisia, he was crying that Africans tend not to be crazy about speaking French. There's a high resentment of Western presence in Africa. People are beginning to ask questions. People are beginning to ask for change. People are beginning to ask that the West should let them alone in Africa. And that is exactly what is coming. So for your information, everything is dicey. There is nothing one way in life. There is absolutely nothing that is one way in life. In fact, as a matter of fact, life is relative. What is good for you might mean bad for someone. Take, for instance, a gasket maker or one that makes a body bag will be praying for more people to drop dead so that he can sell his product. Those who were bereaved, are also not happy that their own people are dropping dead. So that is the concept of life. That is the reality of life. So what am I trying to say? Russia is not going to end in spoiling markets to French and Germans. So make no mistake about it. By the time the war in Ukraine ends, which is almost on the concluding part, Russia is going to activate an offensive foreign policy. Offensive foreign policy in the sense that she's going to get deeply involved in Africa. And you must ask yourself, what do you think Russia might desire much in Africa? What do you think? Russia is to give Africa and not Africa to give Russia. Because Russia supplies over 40% of global food consumption, especially when it comes to grain. Russia supplies over 40% of global energy consumption, liquefied gas. The same way in other mineral resources. Russia supplies over 40% of global fertilizer consumption. Also, Russia supplies over 40% of global diamond reserve, especially to the people of Europe, and other unknown solid and liquid minerals you might not be aware of. So, invariably, Russia coming to Africa is not to chase the resources of Africa, just the way the Western people are scrambling and partitioning it. For instance, if Russia is interested to come to Nigeria, what are they interested for, if not mainly market? And what do you think they are going to sell much in Nigeria? Nothing. Because already the BRICS market is enough. Though no market is enough. So you keep expanding as a matter of reality. So don't think Russia is going to fold her hands and not to teach Europeans or the Western countries a lesson. And mind you, if there is any country Russia is so much deeply angry with, is United Kingdom. Is exactly United Kingdom. If there is any country that Russia is seriously worried of, that Russia is seriously in need of teaching a lesson, is United Kingdom. Most of you have never known what has been happening between United Kingdom and Russia. United Kingdom have done everything humanly possible to undermine Russia. And if Russia wants to undermine United Kingdom, it's a question of spoiling United Kingdom market, especially in Africa. And there's no other place United Kingdom have high interest than the Nigerian state. It's as simple as that. And that's why the politics Britain is now playing in the case of Nigeria that is the current policy, is not to have total ownership the way they used to have. The politics they are now playing in Nigeria is to draw other interest parties like United States and the China, thereby making it to look like Nigerians' interest is not only there in China, that also American interest, thereby making it to look like Nigerians also Chinese interest is there. And that is where a high diplomacy, high maneuvering, high intellectual input is needed, especially on the side of the leadership of the indigenous people of Biafra. And by extension, every single one of us. Good morning, good afternoon. Because good evening. You must not go extreme left, neither can you go extreme right. We are talking about reality here now. I'm Mazi Chika Austin. Yes. America is dying. Look at issues. America has interest in Nigeria, of course. And what might be American interest in Nigeria? Also energy space. And that is. And of course, by extension, yes. American diplomatic influence is dying. America has interest where American interest here in Nigerian life. Geopolitics, diplomacy, and energy. Geopolitics will mean using Nigeria to influence other African players to our own side. It's just like having a big, in a family, you want to get the elder son. If you get the elder son, the eldest, I mean to say, if you get the eldest son, then you believe you can influence the remaining persons in that family. That is American interest in Nigeria. America feels that in as much as Nigeria is perpetually on their side, she can use Nigeria to influence other African opinion. But that is no longer lasting because the Biafrans and the Uluwa people have never been properly utilized until the emergence of IPOB. If you have been following the American Embassy press statement of late, you see them, they are now responding to a whole lot of IPOB press statements. Countries don't respond to people they have not seen as a power subscribers. Recently, IPOB gave a press statement, accusing American government of trying to unpick or supporting a particular presidential candidate. American government never allowed, American embassy never allowed that press statement to land. They gave a counter press statement, distancing and denying that press statement. That they never. Now, ordinarily, America would not respond to an entity or an actor they see to be inconsequential, passive, and without any influence. They wouldn't have. But they see it pertinent to respond to that press statement because they understood that IPOB is an actor, is a non-state actor that is gradually reaching out, seriously reaching out to interest parties. They understand that. And they were able to clear their names from what IPOB alleged because they want to maintain a ground of we are not what you're seeing us. It is a whole lot of technical issue. I don't want to be forced to go deep because it's a very sensitive matter we're talking. I'm trying to discuss here. the way it is. So on the other way around, Britain also have her own interest, which is energy, nothing, energy and market. Because Britain understands that the polarization of Nigerian state is for our own good. If everything in Nigeria is destroyed, people, what Britain does is that if everything in Nigeria, the education is destroyed, the health is destroyed, then they will not give you a less difficult immigration policy to enable you to come in to seek education in their land, seek health tourism in their land. And as you're doing that, you're coming in with a huge amount of money. So you are doing not only brain drain, you are also doing capital flight. So Britain understands that question. So all she does is to encourage polarization, encourage, anything that will make the people to consider how to live. And of course, they know that the more people are flying, exiling themselves out of the country, she is cutting her own cut from that population. All she needs to do is to have a favorable immigration policy, and you see them coming in. And of course, China also have her own interest because she has been running economic diplomacy, loan, and construction. So when you now see all these things on play, you will now understand that you don't think that depending on one entity is just an easy pass to you having your way. Look, for information, one thing you must understand in this is this. Mazi Kanu is a wonderful strategist, really superb strategist. As a matter of fact, he is a realist. Yes, he's a realist in the sense that he understood the chase before him. He understood the game before him, and in most cases, he's healthy to take the risky path. I repeat, in most cases, it is healthy to take the risky path, and that is really the chase before him. The most silly decision that the Nigerian government have ever made when it comes to handling of IPOB and our self-determination project is the extraordinary rendition of Mazi Nnamdi. You see, the issue of Nigeria is not basically in the hand of the local politicians. The local politicians you're seeing are highly unstable. I mean what I'm saying. They are highly unstable. They cannot even die for Nigerian state. Neither can they bring down their children abroad to die for Nigerian state. So the Nigerian they are enjoying is owing to the fact that Nigeria is just an instinct. They are cashing out from. Not they have zero patriotism for Nigeria. It is in a simple way. Aisha Buhari spends her life in Dubai. When it gets to election, which is a time to position somebody in the state, she leaves Dubai, comes, go for rally and make a whole lot of noise, and the next day she just up to Dubai. Because they are not committed, they don't believe in them. Even the Nigeria you think they believe in, they have a zero trust, commitment to it. It's just like a marketplace. They come, do their gambling and leave. They are not committed to it. So if any of them is exposed to international pressure, trust me, They will not withstand it. Because there is nothing that can make them to commit their life to Nigeria. Is it because their children are schooling here? Or is it because their children's health system is attached to here? Or is it because their family members are here? Nothing. Or is it because their wealth is here? Their wealth is not here. They are all repatriated into foreign parts. So that is why Britain is doing everything possible to destroy IPOB, because they understand that the future of IPOB is a strong disturbance to them. Because IPOB is gradually surviving every obstacle. Both state-sponsored infiltrators, state-sponsored distractors, IPOB is gradually surviving every single one, and it's not really giving them joy. It's absolutely not giving them joy. It's a thing of concern. Because every single attempt to internally destroy IPOB has fizzled out. You don't mind the nonsense going on in Abuja where they are, where they are making noise despite court judgment, and they are still holding Mazi Chika. See, they are simply trying to see if they can, psychologically weaken him. But unfortunately to them, he's more intelligent than all of them. He understood the process more than all of them. He's mentally tough more than all of them. And make no mistake to think, think that they are on the defense, on the offensive. No, they are not. It's as simple as this. When they went and picked him, they called him a fugitive. They brought him here against international norms and values. And today, all their courts have exonerated him. I mean, all their courts, except Supreme Court, have shown his innocence. And of course, Mazi Chika has moved from supposedly somebody they call a terrorist to somebody that the state is terrorizing, just within a short period of time. Just within a short period of time, the rascality of Nigerian state fizzled out. And today, they are the one that terrorizing an innocent man in the eyes of the world. So what are we trying to say in nutshell? What we are trying to say in nutshell is this. The future, especially in Africa, is a disturbing one. It calls for concern. And not just that, it calls for strategic position. I repeat, it calls for strategic position. And I always say it, my own nation, my own people, we are exposed in trade. We are mainly exposed in buying and selling, commerce. We are not exposed on international politics. We are not exposed on diplomacy. And that's why we are as open as whatever anybody can imagine. But it's hard time we begin to adjust to the reality of global chess. Yes, it is hard time we start adjusting to the reality of the time. And what is the reality of the time? It's hard time we begin to be deeply acquainted with global politics, global political economy, global security system, and inherent in international system. Because ordinarily, averagely, this is just who we are. And now, a typical Biafran want to make opinion in everything that happens. That is just us. Somebody who does not know anything about security, he wants to talk about security. That is who we are. We discuss even things we are ignorant of. Somebody who does not know anything about media, he wants to talk as if he's an expert on media. Somebody who does not know anything about administration, he wants to talk. His nature is that let it be that I say something. And we fail to understand that much analysis leads to paralysis. We fail to understand that. So it's hard time we begin to build a culture of, the culture of, ugbu a ka anyị kwesịrị ịghọta na ihe niile ahụ ikwu ya gositere. Ugbu a ka anyị kwesịrị ịghọta na iti okwe nke ndọrọ ndọrọ a na-eti n'ụwa niile adị ekwu ya ka o si dere. And ihe niile a na-eme na mba ụwa ka esi eme iwu, a na-eme ya n'ihe nzuzo. A na-eme ya n'ihe nzuzo maka na ọ bụ ebe nzuzo ka obodo mara ya na-eme na-anọ kpa nkata dị anya. So anyị kwesịrị dịka ndị ma ebe a na-aga ụta nọ ihe niile awụzi ịpụta ikwuo bra maka na ka ị na-eche na ị na-ekwu ihe niile ọ na ị na-achọ ka mara na iwe na-ekwu ihe niile kamakwa nke a na-ekwesịrị ikwu oge a ka ị na-ewere ihe nzuzo na-enye ndị iro. Na nzukọ anyị nọ nke a na-akpọ IP, nke bụ eziokwu na ndị na-achị anyị ha na-aga ọtụtụ ije imiti mba dị aṅaa maka ihe banyere ya anyị na-eme. Mana o nwere ije a na-aga asị gaa ya n'abalị. O nwere ije a na-aga asị ije a ọ bụrụ ihe a ga-aga mgbe ihe dị. Maka nke bụ eziokwu na mba ụwa chọrọ inyere gị aka a ga-achọ ka ọdịnamma gị na ya bụrụ ihe ụwa ga-ama. Ihe anyị ọtụtụ n'ime anyị na-ama. Imam pụta today, imam pụta tata esi biko ndị na-edu anyị kee mba one unu degara akwụkwọ maka ihe na-eme anyị. Isi ha pụta na ihe onyonyo na ha gbawa gị mba ole ha degara akwụkwọ, na ha gbawa gị mba ole ha na-abụ na igwe ntị, na ha gwa gị mba ole onye isi ala ha maara ihe banyere anyị. Ọ ka o si dịrị. covert, clandestine. And they all have meanings. All these things will mean. So, well, I o nwere onye mere ya na-ekwu na-abụ ya na ọ na-adịkwa mma anyị na-emekwu ihe anya na-aghọtakwa na ọ na-adịkwa mma anyị gbuo n'ọhịa anyị apụta n'ụzọ na-ajụkwa ka onye kwuru ọkụ si adị aga m bịa chọpụta na nso nso ụbọchị a abịa bịa chọpụta enwe onye na-awụrụ n'obodo anyị ọ bụrụ onye ala anyị ka anyị na-akpa nkata dị n'ime ọ onye mba obodo pute ndị a na-anọ onye obodo ahụ so o nwere ka anyị si kwugide okwu jụọ ya ka ndị obodo ha si na-agbakọtara onwe ha nkata o nwere okwu and okwu a ka anyị nwa kwesị iji mara ihe ha dị ekwu okwu ike banyere ha dị ekwu na ihe onyonyo mgbe chọpụta nọ maka ka ha si na-eme ihe mere enwere otu a na-akpọ WhatsApp group ha niile ha nọ n'ime maka na WhatsApp onye nwe ya bụ onye Amerịka ime ya mere ha ga-mepere onwe ha otu ebe a na-akpọ na Telegram maka na ha o doro ha na nke ahụ CIA, FBI enwebeghị agbabeghị mgbọrọgwụ n'ime ebe a na-ekwu onwe na ka ha si na-enwe mmeri na Ukraine ihe awụ ihe anyị nwa na onwe anyị kwesịrị ịghọta ọ bụrụ enweta okwu dị aṅụ okwu dị ime anyị apụta anyị atụsaa ya dịka m na-ekwu okwu a ọtụtụ n'ime anyị amarụ dịka m na-ekwu okwu a dịka m garụ na-ekwu okwu ebe a kịta ma ndị ọma ma ndị ọjọọ na-ege ntị ọ dị mụnwa nwee ike isi na ihe m chọrọ ikwu mana m nwere ike ikwu ebe okwu a m kwuru ebe ọ ga-agarụ ebe ikike m dewe ike isi ihe m chọrọ ikwu kịta ọ ya dị mma na m kwuo ya ọ ya dị mma ma m kwuo ya ebe a ọ bụ ebe ike m kwahụ enwere m ike isi okwu a m kwuru n'ebe ọ ya erula ebe ọ na-amalụ ọ dịrọ enwere m ike ya so maka nke ahụ ekwesịrị m ịma ụdịrị okwu m ga-adị na-ekwu n'ihe onyonyo tọọ ịfụ na asụgide m oyibo gbatuo n'asụsụ anyị maka na okwu a m na-ekwu onwe ndị na-achọ ka a ga-eme ntị onwe ndị na-achọ ka aghọta m na-ekwu ha nwee ghọta ihe m na-ekwu pụta na ha ga-akpọ onye obodo ga-abịa na-atụpere okwu a so ya wụrụ ka o siri so what we are saying in nutshell all this grammar and speaking in nutshell, what I'm trying to say is that Africa is polarized. For those of us who cannot understand it, in summary of what I just said, I mean Africa is polarized, and Africans just have to, wake up and do the right thing. So I think we have to come to the end of this program. I want to appreciate every single one of us that joined us, because your time is really, really amazing. Your time is really, really amazing, and we appreciate it so much. So I know I have a lot of followers from different parts of the world who are not Igbos. Um, I just have to seek for your understanding. For that section, I use Igbo. There was a need for that because things I want to say, I was struggling to couple it in English. My English usage is limited, so to say. It's very highly limited. So I think I felt I could flow easily on my mother tongue. So that's why I went to my mother tongue, because some of the words, some of the sentences were so difficult for me to pick up in English language. Of course, as a matter of fact, we are told in English class that English language is not completed. So I want to thank you for your time, for everything you've done. And we'll be giving you updates. Trust us on that. We'll be giving you updates. We will definitely be giving you updates. So from here, I want to say thank you and do enjoy yourself. Okay. Um, Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Depending the part of the world you are watching us from. I am Mazi Chika, and we are here once again to look at issues as they evolve, especially on the global space. And that is what we are going to use this moment to see if we can achieve. That is what we're going to use this moment to see if we can achieve. Very, very important. We understand it. There is various global developments, and it's important we understand the importance of not just being knowledgeable, being informed about things evolving, how things are developing. But I think beyond that is we own ourselves responsibility to make a critical evaluation of everything happening around us. We must understand that we're part of this world, irrespective of the continent at which we find ourselves. We are part of the global community. We are stakeholders in this world. And we must, as a matter of necessity, demand for inclusion, demand for participation. You see, when you play an isolative card, invariably you isolate yourself. So I am Mazi Chika, as I rightly said earlier, and it's very important you notify us if we're coming out loud and clear. If you're receiving us from your end on a clear note, you have to make use of the comment section to inform us that we are coming out loud and clear. Then we got no business other than to advance to this evening's discussion. Very, very important. And I also believe on the screen of your gadget, you can see a link. That is our YouTube channel. Of course, we are waiting for a reasonable number of subscribers on YouTube. Then we also have a YouTube channel properly activated so that we can have a multi-dimensional channels of reaching out to people, very, very important. So let us understand if you're receiving us loud and clear. Let us understand if we are coming out on a better note. If we are, then we have to, I think I can get some responses to that effect. So we have to move. So this evening we are specifically going to talk about global development. And of course, when I talk about global development, it's not only leverage, also help us to share this program. It's not leverage to political development. It's not leverage to economic development. Neither is it leverage to social development. All we're going to talk about this evening, as much as we can, is all encompassing. We are going to look at the world from a broader perspective and then make a holistic assessment about the global development. The essence of that, I want us to appreciate something here. I want us to understand something here. Africa has been the way she is, not because of any spiritual, like some of us would want to think. It's not because of any divine exclusion, not because God said a beings excluded Africans. No, Africa has been the way it is because Africans refuse to integrate. And when you fail to integrate, when you fail to follow suit, various global development, you are doing yourself a lot of disservice. And I want to tell you, one of the concerns of the West today is because there tend to be a very strong awakening. There tend to be a very strong consciousness, messages that are geared towards, rejuvenating the minds of people they felt were those. I think this age, there is a serious reawakening. But make no mistake about that, because whenever there is a progression, whenever there is a flow, I want you to take note to what I want to say. Whenever there is a flow, two things happen. Either to reconfigure that movement, I'm talking about redirecting the direction of the movement, or putting a total stop of that movement, which one can say missing it. Either the movement is fixed advantageously to the oppressor, or the movement is mixed. Do you understand me? So this is exactly what is happening ongoing in this part of the world. Specifically talking about Africa. There is a growing consciousness. There is a growing reawakening. But it's not enough for you to acknowledge that fact. Beyond that acknowledgement of this reawakening, this consciousness, you must understand that the primordial at the level of this consciousness, at the level of this reawakening, one thing you should understand, or one thing you must understand, is that the primordial powers are not just going to watch the consciousness, they are not going to watch the reawakening